All right, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Okay. Welcome to Go Sunday. If we can kind of come in and find our seats and
Do you want to go ahead and pray? That would that way I know.
And before we get started, before we turn this over to Mark, and we're going to hear about Administer Justice. Administer Justice is a legal ministry, aid ministry, offers low-cost legal clinics to those that cannot afford an attorney. So we'll pray, and then we're going to turn it over to Mark, and we're going to allow time at the end for your questions. So you just, as you think of things, just store those in the back of your mind, and we will also take the time to pray for Mark and the ministry at the end. So, Father God, we thank you for this opportunity together in your house with your people. Thank you for Mark. Thank you for putting this on his heart and for leading him into this ministry called Administer Justice, Lord. And I pray that you would just speak through him today, Lord, and we're excited to hear what you want to be doing in and through this ministry here at Mount Joy. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Thanks, Shelley. So for those of you who don't know me, Mark Montanye, and as Shelley said, it's been my heart for a while to start a legal clinic. And that's just, you know, it's interesting, the sermon today tied in kind of perfectly with what I'm doing. Everybody has gifts. God gave them to everyone. Sometimes you don't think your gifts are really that valuable. And I'm one of those. If you notice through the gospel, Jesus didn't have a lot of good things to say about lawyers. And that's held true throughout time. Go to any bookstore or any gift shop, there are plenty of joke books. You won't find a lot of joke books about nurses. My wife is one. I can't find one. I try to get gag cards. No, everybody loves nurses. Most people love doctors. We're there like with politicians. So no one gets that gifting from the Holy Spirit, right, to be a lawyer. Aha, wrong. And so I stumbled across this ministry years ago, and I think many of you, if you were here back when we first moved to Mount Joy, it was a little bit after we moved, but the Holy Spirit pricked my heart and said, hey, there's this ministry out in Chicago, or near Chicago, called, back then it was called Gospel Justice Initiative. And they had a kind of a seminar you could go to. It was a weekend seminar. So I grabbed my daughter, not that I was trying to push her into the law, but she's in law school now. And we went, and I was thrilled. It was kind of a neat idea. So I said, all right, Lord, you know, take the reins. And so I was interested in doing it. But I still had this in the back of my mind, like, how are you going to use lawyers? What's this all about? I know for a long time, I envied my wife, because from the time we dated, her desire was to go into the mission field. And we always hear about nurses, you know, mercy ships, and I mean, they're part of Jesus, right? Nurses. Lawyers, we don't hear justice ships. We don't hear about, you know, ships sailing around the world, serving people, you know, doing their wills and getting them out of jail. No, we don't see that. But I stumbled across this book by Bruce Strom. It was at the clinic, and it's called Gospel Justice, Joining Together to Provide Help and Hope for Those Oppressed by Legal Injustice. And when I say this is perfect timing, you'll all remember the series that we went through on Sedek, or justice. And that was fascinating. And I thought, wow, this is great. I'm starting to feel like maybe there is a reason lawyers are called. And then recently I've stumbled across Titus 3:12. Anybody know who Zenos is? Again, yeah, he's not one of those go-to guys in the Bible. I'll just read you a quick passage. So Paul's on the island of Crete. He's ministering there, and he's asking for help. And so he says, I've decided to spend the winter there Do your best to speed Zenas the lawyer and Apollos on their way. See that they lack nothing. Now you could read that one of two ways. Maybe Paul's saying, be sure to get Zenas on his way, get him out of here. No, that's not what he meant. He had a mission for him, and he wanted him to do something. So he was saying, be sure to get Zenas here quickly. I need his help. Now that was music to my ears. I thought, wow, Paul calling another lawyer? If you don't know, Paul was a lawyer. He was one of the great lawyers of his time. In fact, he knew the law so well, he was one of the lawyers that was tasked with getting those Christians out of the picture, so to speak, in the early church until the Holy Spirit got a hold of him. So that is what brings me here today. I realized God can use me. So when you find that out, you have to be used. You can't hide. You can't bury your head in the sand. You got to go. So here we are. I'm going to begin this little talk today but it's about a 9-minute video. It does a good job of explaining kind of the nuts and bolts of Administer Justice, and from there we'll go on with a short little slideshow and then another slide to wrap it up. Go ahead.
I serve as the Senior Director of Engagement here at Administer Justice. I want to tell you more about our model of legal ministry so you can discern if it's a right fit for your church. Now, before I worked at AJ, I was a pastor's wife for 20 years, very involved in the local church. So I know from firsthand experience how quickly pastors become maxed out on programs and new ministries, and how frustrating it can be when the vision of seeing lives transformed and communities impacted gets swallowed up by busyness. Pastors like you know that God's word clearly calls God's people to seek justice for the vulnerable. So you're eager to equip your congregation to do that, but you might not know where to begin. Or honestly, you might be worried about seeing your church divided around justice, which has sadly become a polarizing and political word instead of a biblical one. So this model is designed for you and your church. In short, it makes doing justice simple and it unites people around the gospel. Now, your church might already be involved with a food pantry or homeless shelter. I know ours was. It's a great way to help people in need, but it might not help them avoid poverty or move out of poverty. Legal issues involving landlords, consumer debt, child support, healthcare, veterans benefits, these are the things that are often at the root of poverty, whether for the elderly, for families, or single moms. In fact, single moms with young children are the biggest demographic of people living below the poverty line. Without legal advice, simple problems become big problems, and the result sadly can be devastating and push people further into poverty and despair. In order to access justice, these neighbors need the help of a lawyer and their questions answered so they can chart a path forward, and that is where your church comes in. With legal help from a caring team of volunteers, clients can find freedom from legal burdens, they can experience God's love for them through his people, and they can gain a new appreciation for the church. It's becoming harder in our culture for people to see the church as a good thing and a stabilizing influence on the community, and your church can change that perception. Now, sadly, less than 0.1% of churches in America are providing legal help. So Administer Justice exists to equip churches like yours with our simple model of legal ministry so that lives are transformed and communities are impacted. You might wonder if there's really a need. Aren't there other organizations providing legal aid? Why does the church need to step in? Those are great questions, so let me talk about the need. In our civil justice system, which includes things like family law, healthcare, housing, veterans affairs, there are 150 million new cases every year, and the majority of those are never going to require representation in court, but they do require information and guidance from a lawyer. Our law provides many wonderful protections for the vulnerable, but those protections are often hidden for someone without legal training or skill. And just one example of that, veterans completing claim forms to receive benefits owed to them, they were 144% more successful in receiving those benefits when they had the help of a lawyer than if they did it themselves. So small act from a lawyer can have a really big impact on someone's life. Now, we all know lawyers are expensive. 1 in 3 Americans cannot afford an attorney. So while the basis of our democracy is this pledge of justice for all, the reality is that every year 37 million Americans are turned away from legal help. That's a hard number to picture. So if you picture your local sports stadium filled to capacity, let's say it seats 60,000, with low-income people needing legal advice, there would be 6 legal aid attorneys who would walk into the stadium to meet the need. And if those 6 attorneys met with each person for just 30 minutes to give advice, it would take them 6 months working 24/7 with no bathroom breaks to help everyone. In other words, there's a massive problem. A recent study by the Legal Services Corporation revealed that low-income Americans, like some people in your congregation and neighborhood, do not get adequate legal help for 92% of their civil legal problems. And how many low-income Americans have legal problems? Well, according to that study, 3 out of 4 low-income households had at least one, if not more, legal problems in the last year. And not surprisingly, most of them said those problems impacted their lives in significant ways, affecting finances, mental health, physical health and safety, and their relationships. The solution to all these depressing statistics is surprisingly simple. It's to provide low-cost access to legal advice in as many places as possible. That is what AJ aims to do through the home of the church. Now, why the church? Well, first, because God commands it. Over and over, God calls his people to seek justice for the vulnerable, and he judges them when they don't. He judges them for idolatry, and he judges them for injustice, which includes failing to seek justice for those in need. So the church should be leading the way. Secondly, people cannot truly flourish apart from the church. That's what we believe. In God's kingdom, the local church is Grand Central Station. That's where everything happens. It's where we all find salvation and healing and family and home. And what better place for people to be as they walk through hard times? And we hear it over and over from clients that the compassionate care and hope they receive from the volunteers through words of encouragement and prayer are as important as the legal advice. That is beautiful. And finally, because churches are everywhere, they're in every city and every community, we want our gospel justice centers to be as common as a Walgreens or a CVS. And churches exist all across our country. They're perfectly positioned to serve their neighbors. They're accessible. They're usually available on Saturday mornings when most of our centers open. So centers are needed. The church is the ideal place to host them. How do they work? Well, churches open their doors for 4 hours, usually on a Saturday morning, once a month. The center is run by a team of volunteers that's led by a justice champion, so that's the point person for the team, usually someone who's not a lawyer but has a heart for the vulnerable and is a good leader. That team can be as small as 4 people or much larger. In addition to the justice champion, every team will have at least 1 volunteer attorney, ideally 2. The attorneys are not representing clients in court, they're just giving legal advice and coaching on next steps to the client. So we're doing justice with them, not for them. Every team has a client intake specialist. That's the first person the client meets when they come. They're going to take all the information related to their legal situation and enter it into our database so that later when the attorney sits down with them, they have everything they need. The intake specialist also collects the $30 copay that we charge to book an appointment as a way of inviting the clients into the process. And they won't have to pay that again if they come for a follow-up appointment. And every team has a client advocate. And they'll meet with the client after they meet with the attorney, make sure the client understood everything, that they're clear on their next steps. But they'll also provide emotional and spiritual support by asking good questions, offering to pray with the clients, and referring them to other organizations or ministries that might be able to help them with other issues they're going through. The other volunteer roles are hospitality specialist, who makes the place as homey as possible, often with coffee and baked goods. The prayer champion, who enlists the support of the host church and prepare prayer cards for the clients. Follow-up advocates, who follow up by phone a few weeks after the appointment, see how things are going and see if additional support is needed. Community advocate, who helps spread the word about the center in the community. And then interpreters, who will serve as needed and as available. You do not have to have a big church to get started. We have small churches with 30 regular attenders hosting centers, and we have churches that have attendance in the thousands hosting centers. The model exists to equip your church to do legal ministry, so it can be adapted as needed. Now, if you long to see your church making an impact in your community, to see your congregation united around gospel justice, and to see lives transformed, both clients and volunteers, then let's talk and see if our model is a right fit for your church. You can book a conversation with me. It's not a commitment. We know you're going to need a lot of information before you make a decision, but I'd love to talk with you, hear more about your church and how you're reaching out to your neighbors to see if we can help you do that. So find a time on my calendar using the link and download our one-page summary that shows the timeline and process for getting started. Let's see the church lead the way in seeking justice for the vulnerable. Thanks.
Okay, so she did a much better job than I could have summarizing what Administer Justice and what a legal clinic at our church would look like. Go ahead and fire up the next, okay. So that is the mission. Bruce Strom, like I said before, the founder of this ministry, was a lawyer, just like me, founded his own practice, became really successful at it. And one day went to work and just scratched his head and said, what am I doing? Who am I helping? And so he threw in the towel, so to speak, fiscally, financially. As far as the world would gauge success, he threw it all away. And he started this ministry. And so there it is. That's his mission, to empower vulnerable neighbors with the help of a lawyer and the hope of God's love. Go ahead. And that's the vision they have. So she talked about there's a church on every corner. Ideally, every one of those churches will have a justice center. So that, like she said, it's as easy as going to Walgreens. If you got a legal need and you can't afford to go into your local attorney's office and pay $260 or $300 for an hour-long consultation, you've got a place to go to get some direction and avoid further problems. Go ahead. So, and you'll recall Pastor Carl did a pretty extensive series on justice a while back, and pretty clear the Bible has a lot to say about justice and injustice. She spoke briefly to some of the warnings about injustice. There's judgment that comes to people who carry out injustice against God's people. Isaiah 1:17. You can just kind of note these for your reading pleasure this afternoon. These are three just quick references. Micah 6:8. Probably many of you know these. Probably if you haven't memorized them, you'll know them. And Psalm 82:3 and 4. They speak to what the church's obligation is to the poor, the oppressed, the fatherless, the widow, and that's kind of the mission. Go ahead, next slide. So there's a phrase we've all heard before, right? We've all watched our favorite cop shows. We've all got our true crime blogs that we listen to on the way to work. Is it true? Does everybody have the right to a free attorney? No. In fact, the system does everything it can to prevent that. Even in criminal matters where the Constitution is explicitly clear that you have the right to counsel, and the Supreme Court has said in a case called Miranda, not only do you have the right, but the police have to tell you about the right before you speak to them. But guess what? Then the bureaucracy kicks in, and they want your tax returns. They want your W-2s. They want to make sure you can't afford a lawyer. Kind of sounds like injustice, doesn't it? Next. So, criminal defendants who are unable to afford a lawyer have the right to free legal representation. That's where it stops. That's where that phrase ends. You don't get a free lawyer if you have a problem with the phone company. Quick little battle story. This was not a free lawyer example, but it could have been. Elderly gentleman called me one day and said, hey, I just got my cell phone bill, and all of a sudden it says I owe $2,300. It's normally about $60. So that's unusual. Bring it in. Let's have a look. And he said, and by the way, they've been calling me for the past 3 or 4 months saying I have to pay this or they're going to shut my phone off. I said, well, come on in, we'll make a call. And sure enough, he was able to pay. It was when I was working in my day job. And he paid the consultation fee. And turned out somebody had stolen his identity and purchased a couple of iPhones for their pleasure and then run up a bill. Well, the company that he had his phone through didn't know that, so they started sending him the bill. We proved it. We demanded that they send the invoice, that they send the signed contract, that he purchased the phones, which he didn't, so they couldn't do that. And so they kind of scurried away and hid under a carpet for a while. The phone calls stopped, but the bills kept coming. So then that's where the lawyer steps in. I sent one of those, we call them strongly worded letters. They're basically, knock it off or I'm going to sue you. And they didn't knock it off. They kept it up. Well, one of the joys about being able to tell a large company to knock it off, if they keep demanding money when they're not entitled to it, you can request treble damages, which means you triple the amount of the outcome at the end. So this cell phone company kept sending threatening letters. After I had told them, I represent John Doe, don't talk to him anymore, talk to me. They kept sending him letters. I sent them another letter demanding that they stop and telling them that the amount they were going to pay him just tripled. Because as a consumer, our law protects you. When you have a lawyer, the collector can't talk to you anymore. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people's solution is they take that invoice, they get in the mail, confused, scared. What do? They toss it. They put it in the trash. He didn't, and thankfully not. The success story was because he had the money to call a lawyer, he was able to get a nice settlement. It didn't harm the phone company a bit. Several $1,000s was peanuts to them. But to him, it made a big difference. Next one. Anybody want to take a guess at that one? All right, we'll see who was right. Next. Next slide. I'll get to that in a minute. Next slide. Yeah, 100 million people can't afford a lawyer in this country. And just for kicks and giggles, if you don't believe the statistic, just go through well, not phone book, we don't have those anymore, I'm dating myself. Google a lawyer, doesn't matter, what lawyer, a state lawyer, Google the only one I wouldn't say is don't Google a personal injury lawyer because they make money off your settlement, that doesn't count. But they basically are going to charge you, unless they have free consults, which some do, and it depends on the type of practice. But many of them will charge you $200 to $300 for an hour of their time. And that's unreachable for many, many people in the United States. So it says 3 out of 4 people have low-income households experience one or more legal problems. You heard her talk about that. Many of us either have had them ourselves or know someone who has. It's not the type of thing where you get a letter in the mail saying, we're suing you for $1 million. No, it's usually more subtle than that. It's usually single mom, gets injured, can't take care of her kid. Knock, knock, knock. Children and youth, we're here to help. Oh, you can't care for your child. We'll take them into custody now. And it's your job to prove that you are able to care for your child. Pretty daunting for a mom who maybe had a severe injury, who is now on painkillers, who maybe gets addicted to painkillers, who then finds themselves spiraling downward. So those are the types of things that a lot of people can't afford a lawyer for. And so when that single mom would pick up the phone and start calling those attorneys listed in the Google pages, she's going to get a lot of, I'm sorry, we can't help you. When she calls legal aid of Pennsylvania, Central Penn, what's she going to get? Sorry, you're probably 6 months, a wait list. Legal aid, no matter where you are, I used to volunteer and help out legal aid when I was in New York as an attorney. I do it here. Legal aid is overwhelmed. Great organization. They do free legal work for people, but they need help. They're constantly reaching out to the bar associations, asking for attorneys to volunteer their time to help them with the spillover, if you will. Go ahead. So that kind of tells the picture nationwide, what's happening in our legal system. Go ahead. And that, she spoke to that. I don't know if she spoke to the exact percentage, but that was another one. Again, we note the civil legal problems. It's not, people getting pulled over for driving with a suspended license, or, people driving when they're high or under the influence of alcohol. Those aren't the types of things that I'm talking about. Those people will get a public defender. They will get a free lawyer if they're arrested. These are people who just happen to, in a very litigious society, a very legal-bound society, they just find themselves overwhelmed by the system. Where do you think we rank? Go ahead, give us the right answer, Earl. Maybe a little hopeful, we're not at the bottom, but still not very impressive for a country that has Lady Justice plastered all over its government buildings, swears about law and justice, equal justice under the law, all the catchphrases, we've heard them, but do we really believe them? Go ahead. You can go to the next one. So this is what really drew me to gospel justice. Yeah, we've all heard about legal aid. We've all heard about organizations that do legal work for free. There are legal clinics already out there. So she spoke to that point. Mark, why are you trying to reinvent the wheel? Or really, Bruce Strom is the founder of the ministry. Why are you doing this? These entities already exist to help the poor with their legal problems. I think all the statistics we just watched and those football stadiums she showed you, they speak differently. So go ahead. Any guesses on this quiz? Go ahead, Earl. 0.1 of 1% of the churches in this country feel that justice is something they should get behind and wrestle with. It's dirty, it's ugly, it's messy, it's not pleasant. She spoke to it very briefly. She kind of glanced over it, but I wanted to drill down on it. She was worried about how this would divide her church. That's sad. That's sad. Doing something that the gospel is very clear about, that the Bible, the Word of God is very clear about, that if you don't do it, there will be judgment. And yet, there's that number. It's kind of makes you wonder, well, why are we here if not for that? So there again is that statistic. Next slide. So here's one that I wanted to speak to, because a lot of people say, well, why isn't it free? What are you doing charging these poor people $30? Well, free, in my belief, often is a bad idea. A $30 copay, if you will, is skin in the game. We've heard that expression before. It's a piece of the action. $30 makes them show up at the consultation. $30 gives them ownership of the consultation. $30 lets them realize, this is my problem, this is my money. And $30, to most of them, is a lot of money. $30 may be that tank of gas that they needed next week. So do we say, I'm sorry, Miss Jones, you don't have the $30? Tough. We're just a little better than that law firm down the street. No, we don't. That's where you come in as a body, all of you. By giving to the ministry, you can say, hey, for those who can't afford that $30, we'll be there for you. And you'll get, in a minute, we'll get to all the different champions, and you'll see how that works. Go ahead. So this is the client advocate and what they do. So basically, in a minute, we'll get to where all the different advocates or all the champions, as they call them. But the client advocate is the one who's kind of hands-on. They're taking the client by the hand, walking them through the system. The attorney spends like 37 minutes, maybe 40 minutes with a client, okay? It's everybody else, and that's why I love this model. It's the church that really carries the ball. They do the heavy lifting. Legal advice is easy, kind of rolls off the top of my head most of the time. If I don't know the issue, I might have to do some research, but for most family law questions, it just rolls out of my mouth. That's what happens after 27 years. But there's a lot of issues that I can't deal in 40 minutes. I can't give them the answer. They need their hand held. They need prayer. They need help. They need a family. They're lonely. Those are things the church can do. So you see, what does the client advocate do? They explore needs beyond legal concerns. They serve as a resource coach. Again, a lot of the issues that get people into trouble in America, what's the Bible say? For a lack of knowledge, my people perish. It's true in the legal system too. The answers are there. They just got to know where to find them. And so this consultation that we offer is usually just giving them the tools to run with and to defend themselves. Go ahead. Just another short video we can watch as this makes it a little more clear.
A lady came to AJ. She was a grandmother of 6 children.
Her daughter with 6 kids was abusing drugs and was abusing alcohol. And she was living with them, but she was more in the process of abandoning them.
The DCFS had told her that if this is not working out, if the children are left in the evening alone, they would take the children away. She said, I don't want to lose the children. That was her main concern. I don't want to lose the children.
The DCFS worker was not exactly doing what I know from experience that DCF workers can do to advocate to get children back.
And she had tried everything and it was not working out. The grandma was determined to obtain the custody of these children, not to lose them.
Here at Calvary, the 4th Saturday of each month, the Administer Justice Oak Park Legal Clinic meets. We see a wide range of people with a wide range of problems.
A lot of times when clients come in to administer justice, we only know a little piece of their situation. And so we're learning while they're here, how best can we articulate a next steps plan.
We gave her a lot of legal information at the time.
The lawyer at AJ was able to give her the exact place where she should go to court and where she should apply to get the custody of the children.
We also recommended attorneys, gave her an idea of what was going to happen when she went to court and what she might have to do with DCFS. Also gave some housing information because she needed money.
We told her practical steps as to go to the food shelters, the crisis center in Elgin, different places where she could get help with the rent and with food for the children. And so she followed all the steps that we gave her to get the support that she needed for the children. By the time that I followed up, like a couple of weeks after, she had gone to court and she had obtained custody. And the wonderful thing was that her former husband, she was divorced, the husband said that he would help. So he would come when she had to go to work in the evenings. He would come to stay with the children so the children would not be left alone.
So that was a remarkable amount of change, a shift that was made in such a short period of time.
I was able to follow her with her a couple of times when this lady told me, please pray for my daughter that she would, really follow up and go to get to therapy and be, get back on track. That's what we were praying for. The daughter, when she had seen everything coming back together in place, the daughter had said that she wants to come back and be the mother that she should be.
She did come in overwhelmed, distressed, distraught, not knowing what to do. And AJ provided steps, concrete steps that she was able to take. Emotionally, she went from being overwhelmed to having knowledge. She was empowered. It restored her cognitive capacity. It increased her capacity to engage in those institutions that she previously had no knowledge about how to engage. So that was what AJ did for her.
What AJ does and how it does it, I felt encouraged that Administer Justice has a model. And that was encouraging to me, that it's not so insurmountable for a church to have an Administer Justice in each particular location, because the model is created, they just need it staffed.
The lawyers, the client advocates, the prayer champion, the interpreters, God uses all of us as we allow Him to use us.
I've seen that there are a lot of people who are at a crossroads and think there are no answers to their problem, and you can provide a lot of help even in a 45-minute meeting, and a lot of good can come out of a short meeting like that, and so it's well worthwhile because there's a big need for this.
You can go to the next slide. And the next. So these are the steps that I've been working through to launch a Justice Center. Obviously, the first one is to explore the model. That took a while. I began this process 2016, 2017. I think I went to the conference out in Illinois. And for a number of reasons, I was a slow starter. So, but here I am, and ready to make things happen. The articles of administration, those have been signed. They're in process. Mount Joy has agreed to kind of take this ministry under its wing, open up the church for a Saturday every month. And so we're at number 3, building that volunteer justice team. So you heard all of the areas and all of the different ways that you as a congregation can step in. Interpreters, client advocates, justice champions. I can flesh these out more afterwards, but each of them has a role, each of them has a responsibility, and it spreads the wealth, so to speak. One person's not doing it all. As this morning's message made clear, this is not a top-down model, okay? This is a cross model. Everybody's got a part in this. And then the client or the community advocate is kind of the spread the word person. That's the, how do we get this out there? How do we let people in Mount Joy know there's a place you can go to get your legal questions answered if you can't afford a lawyer? And so the launch time, we signed the articles about a month ago, and we're hoping for a February 1 launch. So I got a lot of work ahead of me. And I'm hoping it's not arm twisting. I'm hoping it's an open hand that I'm seeing. I would like to have another attorney come alongside me and do that part of it. Makes things roll a lot more smoothly on a Saturday morning. I'm currently volunteering at another Justice Center that just opened up in Lancaster City at Mission Church. So that's offering the same service, but in the city. So we can call it rural justice and urban justice if you want. So, but anyway, that's where we are. Go ahead, Carl. I'm not sure how many we've got left. Yeah, that kind of breaks it down. This slide tells us where you've got an opportunity, and there are plenty of them. So a justice champion, that's that chief cook and bottle washer, so to speak. That's the top dog. They're the ones who, if you've got a heart for justice, if you feel like this is something you could grab hold of, that's your slot. The attorney, I threw my hat in already. I'm looking for help, so that's my job to find another cohort in that area. The client advocate, we can explain more again as to what that person is. That's the hands-on, taking the client by the hand. They basically are their connection. And so they will walk with the clients through the process. They'll give them the next step sheet. They'll call them and actually I think there's a follow-up, yeah. So this model, again, she said, I think in the video, as few as 4, but as many as 9. So this is a well-oiled machine if you had this many. A follow-up advocate is that person who sees what the list was and then follows up 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later and says, hey, how you doing on these? Are you doing okay? Where do you need help? The interpreter, we don't need to use our imagination, but we certainly need interpreters in Lancaster County. Hospitality specialist, nothing makes a meeting go better than coffee. So somebody, if they could brew coffee, or if they could twist the arm of a local merchant and say, hey, you know, would you volunteer a pot of coffee a Saturday morning? I'll pick it up. Those are things that could make it a little more pleasurable for the folks stopping in. Prayer champions, you don't even have to be there. You can be, but you don't. And a prayer champion is just like it says. You've got these needs in your hand, you're praying for them, you're caring for them, you're lifting them up to the good Lord, and that's as important as the rest of them. I like the way that kind of fell in the middle. I don't know if that was by accident or not, but I don't think so. The community advocate is that spread the word component. The community advocate is the one who brings this out there to Mount Joy, whether it's to the bar associations, whether it's to other attorneys they know, whether it's to just other churches. They just make it known in the community that we've got this for them. And so they are really our PR team, okay? You can go ahead. And there you have it. Any questions?
Yeah, Mark, just dealing with attorneys lately, we all know that attorneys are very expensive. And how do you decide, you know, there's a lot of families out there that have problems in their family or with their children, and they would say, hey, this is a great way for me to figure out for you to help my children. How do you decide, and that person might have money, how do you decide that who can have this help?
Yeah, and so the question is I guess in short, is there a screening mechanism? How do we screen who's really eligible? And the AJ model does not, okay? When you apply for a public defender, if you've been arrested, they'll screen you. They'll ask you, they'll make you submit your W-2s, your check stubs, they want to know how much you pay for cable. They want to make sure you're really needy. Same thing with legal aid. The professional or the commercial legal aid organizations out there, they want to make sure you're really needy. That's not my job. If it's your mission to get a free consult or a $30 consult, come on in. Shame on you, but come on in. We'll talk to you. So no, we don't screen. You'll pay the $30. If you make $300,000 a year, you'll still pay the $30. We don't represent people, so make that clear. We do not represent people. So we offer a consultation, and we offer them tools usually to fix their problem. And we We'll try to work with other attorneys in the area, bar associations, other legal aid entities, and we'll try to get them help. And if needed, I mean, sometimes the rubber does have to hit the road, and you have to sue somebody. You have to go to court. You have to twist an arm, and usually you can't do that on your own. Any other questions? Did that answer your question? Yeah, that was very good. Okay.
Couple questions, Mark. Can you walk through what a Saturday day would look like? Is that a half day, a full day? And then if you go back to that prior slide where you had all the whole team there, does that team support one lawyer, or does that team support multiple lawyers? And in light of, you know, getting this started,
Yeah.
Can one person fill multiple roles?
Yeah, so those roles you see, the only role that would have to be duplicate is the attorney role, or would prefer to be duplicate. There is one justice champion, there is one client advocate, there is one community advocate, there is one prayer champion. I'm not saying those are a limit, but you certainly can have, if I find 20 prayer champions, hey, there's strength in numbers. But no, you don't need a team for every attorney. The attorneys just merely walk in, they're given a packet in advance. And again, the nice thing about this system, AJ has done the work for us, Justice Made Simple. They literally have everything already done. You literally just step into the process. But so no, if that answers your question, the surrounding roles around the attorney, if you will, you don't need more than one. They all serve a client. So they serve a justice center. And so the Justice Center would have those roles in it, preferably. But like she said in the video, as few as 4 could run a Justice Center. And some churches, she said, are as few as 30 in their congregation, and they're making it happen. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mark, question for many people that may be thinking about volunteering. For the champions and advocates, does that require any skill set to come in, or is there a little bit of training involved for people that are thinking about volunteering for these roles?
Great question. So other than the attorney role, clearly if you want to volunteer to be an attorney, you have to be licensed in the state of Pennsylvania. The other roles, there's no, hey, I'm a certified justice champion. No. You get trained by AJ, and that's an online process. You can log in, you take online seminars. Most of the training is geared towards your client intake specialist and your client advocate, because there's a lot of document preparation, there's a lot of document transmission back and forth to administer justice. The clients apply online, so this is all seamless. It's not like you have a stream of people walking into Mount Joy Church throughout the week, hey, I need a lawyer. No, they apply online. I get those, or the Justice Champion would get those. Again, depending on how many roles we had filled, it could be the Justice Champion, it could be the client advocate, it could be the client intake specialist. One of those roles would be getting that application, getting that legal need, parsing it out, maybe following up and finding out, maybe drilling down and fleshing that out. And then probably on a Thursday, the attorneys would get the packet. The attorneys would, obviously, if they needed to research, would research. And Saturday morning at about 9 a.m., the doors open. And for 3 to 4 hours every Saturday, we handle whatever caseload there is. We would know in advance what the caseload is, how many are applying. Clearly, if it's one attorney, I would be limited to 4 people on a Saturday that I could serve. I would not stay here all day. I have a life, and I do this for a living, and I burn out. I'm burnt out, let's say that. But this is kind of a nice way to give back. And so 3 to 4 hours on a Saturday. I do it on the 3rd Saturday of every month. I just got a call from, email from the attorney or justice champion at the Mission Church where they run theirs, and they said, hey, we only got like 2 calls this week. So stay home, enjoy the weekend. And the other attorney handled it all. So same thing would happen here.
This isn't really a question, sorry. I was just going to say for Mark and watching him work in family court for, how many years have you worked in family court? I can't remember. Family criminal. So 15, yeah, 15 years. Both in New York and here in Pennsylvania, we've both obviously just seen that there's a huge, huge need, huge challenges with injustice. And I think just watching him, God must have given him a gift to be able to work in family court, because it is a very, very difficult place, and there's a lot of broken people out there. If you've been in schools, if you've been involved in foster care, if you've been involved with any type of just reaching into the community, this area, even though it may look like a wealthy area and a very blessed area, it is. But it also, like the rest of the country and the rest of the world, is dealing with a lot of brokenness, just, people walking away from God and just broken families. And he does this 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, and comes home and, just like, wow, this is really, really hard. And it's in this area too, and there are a lot of broken people. So even though he says like only 2 people walked in this morning, a lot of it is just because they don't even know it exists, and that there's help out there, and that people are willing to help. And it is messy, and our lives are messy, just from the things we've gotten involved with too. But at the same time, there's really a lot of blessing from it as well. And I just think I'm really excited that he's starting, because as a church body, I do feel like we've been blessed. I feel like as a family, I'm very blessed, because I have such a supportive, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, and these people don't have that from working in the ER. And from what he sees, you walk in and you talk to somebody like, do you have family that can come into the hospital with you? Do you have somebody that can come into the office? I don't have anybody. And to think of not having anybody when you have 3 or 4 kids, or to think of not any connection for a broken, man out there who's struggling on his own, it's just like, it breaks your heart. Anyway, all I had to say is I'm just grateful for this model, because I think a lot of you guys can be support to those people.
Thank you. I didn't pay her to say that. Any other questions? So, as we roll this out, and as I'm going to be moving forward with this, clearly can you go ahead and click on that slide with all the, yeah, there we go. There's the website. That is where you can go, just surf around the website, and you'll get, you don't have to limit it to the Find Your Role extension. Just go to the AJ website, and you will see, they'll have answers to all of your questions. Click down and you'll find ways to volunteer. It'll, again, be a lot of repetition, what you heard today, but should answer any of your questions you have. If you don't, I think my email is on the directory. If not, somebody will find me. Just call the church, email the church, and I will probably be having informational meetings as we go. I would also like to be taking this to the Sunday schools in the next month or 2, and just making sure everybody understands and knows that there's a place for you to serve. So, okay? Sure.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we take some time to pray for Mark right now and Administer Justice. Could you put the slide up with the 9 advocates again? And I know that we're close, and the kiddos are going to be coming out of Sunday school in just a minute or 2, but if I can encourage you to get into groups of 4 or 5 to pray, maybe pray through these roles, pray that God raises up a team. I know it kind of scares me. It's a little scary to me hearing about it. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. It's sort of like, ooh, So let's do that. Let's take about 3 minutes, group with about 4 other people, and please pray for this ministry before we dismiss. And I'll close us with just a sentence or 2 of prayer. So.